Okay. Well, today we definitely going to finish dealing with the covenants. Well, not finish, but continue on dealing with the covenants. And I think it's important for us to really understand this, to grasp this, so we can have the right and the full understanding of what this is about and what this is speaking of. Those that can hear me online, let me know in the chat. So we can have the right and full understanding. Let me know in the chat. Usually I can see everything, but for some reason, oh man, I can't never get this together. Anyway, we're just gonna work with what we got. I thought I'd be able to see the chat on this thing over here, but we just we're gonna keep working, and one day we're gonna have this all the way together. That would be great, man. That would be great. But I can't see if even if it's chatting, right? Y'all give me 1 second. Let me see if I can. Let me try one more thing. Then we're just gonna get started regardless. I'll get started regardless. But yeah, like I said, it's important overall just to look in the scripture, understand the scriptures, to get a full understanding of what the Most High is trying to get us to understand. All right, last try. Then we're just gonna get started. For some reason I can't. Let me bag out of here. But we're gonna finish. We're gonna do some more of the series of the covenant, dealing with the covenant terminology, to get a full understanding of what the covenant is. Some more of the series. So I like to always start off again asking, what's a covenant? It's an agreement. It's an agreement. What are some of the things that are involved in a covenant? Some of the elements. Prophecy. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, conditions. If you mean by circumstances, conditions. Yep, laws. Look at y'all. Some of y'all been studying a little something. Laws. What's that? What else in there? Promises, blessings, curses in there, stipulations, different things of that nature. Could somebody give me some of the steps to a covenant? Give me one of the steps, one of them that you remember. Yeah, things of that nature. The what? Yeah. Some of it can be a cleansing.
Have a witness or someone that stands off to make sure both sides are here. to the terms. They have to come up with decide to come up with terms in the first place. What are we making a covenant upon?
Mm-hmm.
Other steps will be gathering a sacrifice, whether it be a lamb or whatever the case may be, whatever they're using, the dove, and going through the steps of the ritual part of the covenant.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, y'all spot on. Spot on. Going through the ritual part of the covenant. One more time, I just want to make sure everybody online can hear me. If you can hear me, say yes, you can. You hearing it? So I can hear you in the chat. They say I need to mute something. Oh, I ain't never had that much problem. All right, is that better? I know some of y'all said I need to mute. Okay, they say they can hear. So let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to deal with what is called the terminology of the covenant overall. And with this is going to be a lot of reading. It's going to be a lot of reading, but it's going to really help you understand to a greater level. We're not going to give too many just biblical examples. We'll do that in the next class, but it's going to be a lot of reading. Can you? All right, let me make sure I got this computer TV on. It's going to be a lot of reading on this. I want y'all to be able to see it. And forgive me again, for some reason my PowerPoint presentation went somewhere. I don't know what happened with it. But anyway, dealing with, y'all can see that. Dealing with ancient covenants. Now, again, y'all said a covenant is what? An agreement. An agreement. So what is a good term to show what a covenant is doing? Like when you actually making a covenant, it's almost kind of like a term I'm looking for covenant that you can kind of display and everybody be like, okay, that's a covenant that's being made or that has been made or that was made. Huh? Marriage. Not marriage. That ain't what I'm looking for. It's something you do that they used to do in the marriage, you know, in the actual ceremony. I do. No. They were saying no, I do that. I'm talking about, think about what we done talked about. Some that they might do with the finger. Oh. Cut. Oh. So a covenant is a cutting of something that binds you together. Got to remember that. It always, especially in ancient times, it most definitely dealt with blood. One of the most serious covenants that you can make was a blood covenant. So that's why it's important when you think about covenant, you got to think about I'm cutting a covenant, and that's what it really stands for. When you look at the Hebrew word berith, what it means is to cut. So I'm cutting something that will bind us together. So this is why in ancient times, for us to really establish each other in a relationship, we cut a covenant with each other. And this is why you cannot have a relationship with the Most High outside his what? Outside of his covenant. So it's just standing at the altar good enough saying, well, I believe. No. It's saying, I'm sorry, good enough. No. You have to come into covenant with him. Now, proclamation is needed. And witnesses around is needed also too, in a sense, when you look at how they cut covenants back then. Now, it's nothing wrong with being in a gathering of people, standing before the Most High, committing to him about what you will do, about giving your life in a group of people. and showing everybody that you're making a covenant, but you got to know what you're doing. You can't just be up there just talking about, well, I'm with you, I'm there, we good, forgive me, and we good to go. You see what I'm saying? It's almost like as if how it was done even in with a wedding, when you have people there, and everybody will witness the marriage, will witness the covenant being made, and celebrate the covenant being made. So it's just important when to understand covenant, so you can understand your relationship with them. Now, I'm gonna have to skim through these things because I don't have my PowerPoint presentation. So it got lost somewhere. So y'all just bear with me. I know y'all been bearing already. But I think this is an important thing to understand. Let's read what this says. What it says. Let's start right here. And it says, a study of covenant form as we know it in the ancient legal documents may possibly serve to bring into the chaos of opinion some objective criteria. The study of, watch this, this is an important thing to know. If y'all can see that, you can write that down, or I can give you this document. The study of any text of scripture divorced from its cultural setting and its historical context is insufficient for formulating conclusions regarding meaning. I'm going to say that again. You start right here. The study of any text of scripture divorced from its cultural setting and its historical context is insufficient for formulating conclusions with regarding to meaning. Such failure is particularly notable in the study of the New Covenant, but it's Old or New Testament setting. So what is that statement saying? What do y'all think that is saying? And y'all speak up so the people can hear you too.
If we take the Bible away from its roots, or that culture, or those people, or that heritage, is in void to if we try to follow it.
Exactly. You can't follow it outside of its cultural setting and its historical basis. And that's what we have been doing for so many years. We take the Bible and take the scriptures and try to understand it from a Western mentality, saying we don't need to worry about the culture. All we need to worry about is what? Our spiritual salvation. But you will not understand the scriptures if you take its cultural setting away and its historical context. What is that saying? All your conclusions will end up wrong. Now, you might get some stuff right, but you have to go back and re-look at it. And that's what we're doing now, because now we're not seeing the Bible just from a spiritual standpoint, even though the scriptures is spiritual. It's the most spiritual book on earth. But when it comes to understanding it, now we're going back to look at it from a cultural standpoint to get the understanding of what the Most High was speaking. So that's all what we're doing now. And we understanding when we put the Bible back in its cultural context and its historical setting, our conclusions is coming up different, ain't it? We're starting to see stuff in a different way, according to its true meaning. So this is why I say, and why we're going to be on this a while, in the sense of studying ancient Eastern cultures. Because in studying this, you'll understand the Most High. Because the Most High don't just drop a new thing on the earth. I'm going to say that again. Why would I say that? Why would I say he don't just drop a new thing on the earth? Huh? It's scripture. But would he drop something that you have never identified with? I'm not saying give people something they identify with. Give the people, see, he's that personal. He's not going to give you something that you have no understanding about. Even when the Messiah came, they had already understood what a kingdom is about and how you honor a king. They understood working in the kingdom. You see what I'm saying? So he can come down at that point and deal with them based off their knowledge of a kingdom, based off their knowledge of what? Dealing with sheep. That's why he used terminology like, my sheep hear my voice, and another they won't hear. But he knew that they dealt with sheep, and sheep are like that. They hear their shepherd's voice and won't hear another shepherd, won't come to another shepherd because what they've been trained to hear their shepherd. So now I can take everything that you do on a daily basis. This is why he's a personal Elohim. He want to deal with you on your day-to-day. He don't want to be something that you just pick up one day a week. You do what you want to do Monday through Friday, but one day a week you deal with him. You see what I'm saying? So it's important for you to understand that he wants to be in my everyday interaction with him. So he can take what I have and show me the revelation according to the setting that I'm in. So that's why it's important to go back and study ancient Near East or ancient Eastern culture and ancient Eastern covenants. So you can understand, okay, this is not something that just was indigenous to the Israelites, but the people of the area knew about blood covenants and how to come into covenants with people and how to come into covenant with God. At the same way that in some instances that they would use animals and sacrifices for covenants, they would cut into themselves and mix the blood and stuff for covenants like that. They would sometimes use oil and sometimes use planting of a tree for covenants. And sometimes they would use people. Sometimes they would give another king his daughter of another kingdom to marry to strengthen the covenant that they had. And I'm gonna say this: it's important to understand the giving of a daughter to make somebody one, even when you, and I know this off subject, but even when you're doing a study of who Esau is. If you don't understand that, you'll be thinking Esau one person, and you'll be doing all this, wasting all this time dealing with one person or one group of people. But you don't understand the covenants that was made with Esau descendants that brought two nations together as one. But you go down one bunny trail, you'll never find, because he got many faces. That's a subject for another day. I just thought I'd throw that out there. But it's important to understand this, that anytime I finna study the scriptures, I got to go back into their culture and their history to understand what this is talking about. Any question that I have, I can't just use a question and base it off today's terminology and basis off today's culture, because I miss what it's really saying. We got that? So how important is that? Yeah, I'm just gonna throw that question out. How important is it to base something off the cultural setting? Y'all can answer that.
You want to get a full understanding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Okay, so now let's go to the next part. Let's look at some of the legal instruments of a covenant. And it reads, can everybody see that? It reads, like any formal contractual document or stringent convention surrounded their creation, implementation, execution, and perpetuation, covenant enactments was precise. Covenant terms were precise. They was detailed. They was unified. So this is something that it just wasn't done just nonchalantly. It was very detailed. It was precise, and it made sure both parties understood it. This is why when you coming into covenant with God, he don't want you just doing something based off your grandparents or following him based off your mama or your daddy. He wants you to do what? Count the cost. This is what it's going to require in order for you to be my servant, in order for you to be my follower. This ain't something that I just want you just jumping out to all willy-nilly. You need to understand the cost of what this is going to take. So when you coming unto me or coming unto my son, I want you to understand me first before you just be jumping into anything. Because you might jump in and don't be in. You see what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of people that ain't in the Messiah that they think they in. Because they didn't do what take time to hear his word said, if you continue in my word, then are you of my what? Followers of my disciples. You see what I'm saying? So you got to find out what his word is, study his word to become what he desired you to be. Does that make sense? All right. So let's keep reading. It says deviation or contravention, they got some different words, often incurred severe penalties and is specific in the agreement. So deviation from these precise, detailed, or unified terms could bring forth severe penalties. But both sides agreed on this first. Now the penalties in every covenant, and most covenant that was made, was severe. Because I was like, man, what we went through as a people, and some still going through it. Some of the stuff we're still going through it. It's like awful. It's almost like, man, that punishment there, man. It's like, good gracious. When you like study slavery and you start looking at the stuff, it's like, man, was it that serious? But then when you study how covenants were made, and they had to make severe consequences, so it would make you think about breaking this. So the consequences was severely, very severe, so it can keep both sides intact. You see what I'm saying? Because you got some fear of what will happen to you that keeps you in covenant, but then you have a love bond because of the new relationship that's supposed to keep you in covenant too. So if you fall out the love bond, then you look at the severe punishments. Be like, oh, you what? Well, look, I'm gonna make this work. I ain't gonna fight against this brother. I know this can happen to me. You see what I'm saying? So we see that the deviations, they brought severe and specified punishments that was agreed upon both parties. Now, where can we find that? Is that in Israel history? Huh? Was that in the Israelites' history?
Yeah.
Yes. Y'all okay? Big time. I mean, very severe consequences. But did the Most High take his time to make them detailed and show them precisely? Huh?
Yes.
Where can we find that?
When he got fed up with the sacrifices.
Where can we find that in the scripture though? The details of this covenant being laid out. Deuteronomy, what chapter? 28. Right. It gives you every detail. It was like they were sitting there at a movie looking at, this is what's going to happen to you in your future. So everything upon this covenant, I'm making sure you know, and once I deliver them to you, this is why he said, I want you to teach this to your children. I want you looking at this, thinking about this when you're going in your house. That's why they would put the things on their doorposts and different stuff like that, so they can always remember the covenant. He wanted them to diligently teach these things to their children to show how detailed and precise that it is. Because these are the blessings that I desire to have because of this relationship. But if you break this, then severe consequences will happen. So this could be with a kingdom with another kingdom, a tribe with another tribe, a man with another man, even in a marriage ceremony, or however it was at that time. You would have a detailed, precise, and unified contract or contractual covenant that they would make to make sure both parties understood it. And they knew what would happen if it was broken or if it was breached. So knowing that, could we say that the Most High was unjust in his punishment? Even though it was bad. But he's not emotional like us. He honors what he said. He is a man of his word. Even if it might hurt his heart to do it, but he got to do it. And has to allow it, or he wouldn't be God, or he wouldn't be a man, or he wouldn't be Elohim, a man of his word. You see what I'm saying? All right, so let's keep going. Let's look at some of the terminology of a covenant. And it reads, specific terms were attached to covenants and covenant making in a Shemitic world of the ancient Near East. In Akkadian, you might have barit tu. It means to clap or to feather. Similar in Hebrew, denoted a bond, a pact, a treaty, or an accord. It signified a formal agreement between parties that affected specific impositions and liabilities which uniquely interrelated those parties. The Shemitic term chiefly engaged to describe the official enactment of such a bond was, like we said before, to cut. Other terms is to confirm, to actuate, to ratify a formal agreement. To cut a bond or a pact then was enacted an official form of relationship by means of legal instruments. So we understand that once we cut, when you cut something, that means it had been cut in two. Can you really repair a cut? Really, like the skin that was there before. So this cut really signifies and denotes that there was this have been made, and this is something that's supposed to be forever. So the cut, it cuts you, and it also bonds you, brings you together. So how could anybody ever say that the children of Israel is no more and done away with? Could they say that? No, because in a covenant, once you cut the covenant, it binds us together. You see what I'm saying? So I cannot just be done with you, especially when I set these terms up for us to be in the covenant. Now, what we can do, and we'll see that in a minute, there is some things when a covenant been broken, some things can be restored, but those are different things, stipulations that is within the covenant that is made if the covenant is broken. You see what I'm saying? A way to come back. So it's important to understand what the Most High know what He doing. He know your end before your beginning. So He knew they was gonna break the covenant before He even made a covenant with them. But He said, well, I'm gonna bind myself to them anyway. Because once we make this covenant with them, it's going to make me, in a sense, be responsible for these people. Even though they rebelled and got the consequences, I'm still responsible for them. So I got to do what I declared in the beginning about them if they have the terms of coming back to me when they break it. You see what I'm saying? So that shows you how much He loved us, that even though He knew He was going to break the covenant, He could have just been like, you know what? I know they're going to break it. I'm going to go get another people. These people right here ain't no fool with no more, because they crazy, rebellious, and some other nationalities out there that ain't rebellious as these people. Right or wrong? But He chose anyway to bind Himself to the most rebellious nation in the world. Stiff-necked. You see what I'm saying? All the stuff that the Most High had done for them, you should have been like, man, wow. I ain't finna break none of this. What other God out there can offer me something when this God doing all this for me? You see what I'm saying? How am I still complaining going through the wilderness when I done seen an ocean open up? I walk on dry land through the ocean, seeing all the fish and the whales just looking crazy at us going through here. You know what I'm saying? I ain't finna ask them. They say that we finna die when we get in the wilderness because we hungry. Then I done seen this man hit a rock and water come out of it. Then I got a pillar of cloud lead me during the day, and a pillar of fire by night. Oh man, how can I be worried about food? I know that's. I would have just been like, well, Moses. I know he can do it. I just want to know when he gonna, give us some food. We need a little groceries out here. I ain't trying to go back to slavery though. But I seen you hit that rock, man, and I seen you open up that, open up that water. You can get us some, some groceries. You know what I'm saying? Some. You know what I'm saying? So after I seen all that, how can I doubt? And then I seen. Then He start dropping birds from the air. for me to have meat and manna to eat from heaven. I'm done. Ain't nothing nobody can show me after that. But you got to be a rebellious people still to question after all that he done to you. You see what I'm saying? Or done for you. So that's why I say it's extremely important to understand covenants, because some subjects we wouldn't have to deal with. I wouldn't be here trying to prove that the Israelites still matter to God if everybody over here understood covenant. Because covenant does what? Binds us together and make that greater greater person responsible for me. Because sometimes you might have a greater kingdom cut a covenant with a lesser kingdom in order to be in covenant, have somebody to protect them. You see what I'm saying? So some questions, if we understood this, would never come up. All right, so we dealt with some of the terminology of it. Let's look at some of the elements of a covenant, and it's going to be important to look at. If I fumble over some of these words, you know, y'all just work with me. So let's look at some of the elements of a covenant. It says, by nature, all covenants consisted of at least two fundamental elements: a relationship and an obligation. That's what we was already talking about. Elements of a covenant is a relationship is formed in the covenant, and obligations because of the covenant. I'm going to say that again. A relationship is formed in the covenant, and obligations from both halves on the because of the covenant. That's the same thing in a marriage, where a marriage really solidifies the relationships, but you make obligations on each other because of the relationship. You see what I'm saying? So that's the same thing that the Most High did. In order for you to have a relationship with me, you must come into covenant. I'm going to give you intimacy, let you get to know me, get to understand my mind, my will, the things that I desire, the stuff on my heart. The only way that you can do that is have covenant with me. And because of this relationship, now I'm responsible or obligated to you, and you're obligated to me. You see what I'm saying? So let's read that. It says it has two fundamental elements, which is relationship and obligation. As legal instruments, covenants brought their stated parties into formal relationships, and by that instrument define obligations. The obligations, watch this, was laws, conditions, and consequences. The obligations was laws, conditions, and consequences. This is the laws that are in this covenant. This is the conditions. The conditions is, if you do this, then I'll do this. This is the conditions that you have. And consequences, if you don't do this, then this is going to happen. So nowhere I can say that the laws of this covenant or the law of this covenant is done away with. Because the laws in this covenant is what keep this covenant together. Because what it makes me obligated to you, and I'm obligated, you're obligated to me. But you have consequences. Now, if it's something that I added to this, I can do away with that. You see what I'm saying? So certain things that was added to this covenant that was done away with, which is animal sacrifices, when the restoration of the covenant came. Because, Christ. Because the first covenant was broken. You see what I'm saying? But he said in Jeremiah that I added these laws, which are sacrificial laws, in order to get you to understand what Christ was going to do. Because the only thing that the animal sacrifices did is what? Restored our relationship with the Most High. When we messed up, we were supposed to be out of relationship. But the way to keep it constant, then you will bring me a sacrifice. And that'll put you back in right standing with me. You see what I'm saying? But when Christ came, he blotted out those sins, completely did away with them. You see what I'm saying? Now I can start off fresh, honoring the laws of the Most High, and don't have to worry about fear of judgment. Now, you see what I'm saying? Because all my things have been laid on Christ or the Messiah. So let's keep reading. Let me see where we left off at. Okay. It says no covenant existed apart from the naming of the parties. So elements was, first we said relationship and obligation. The obligation had laws, conditions, and consequences. And then we see that there was naming of parties. a formal establishment of the relationship between those two parties, and the creation of legal obligation that bind those parties together. So now I'm giving you my name so you can take on my name. A formal establishment, a relationship between those stated parties, then we're going to make this formal where everybody can see that it's going to be included. And the creation of legal obligation that binds us together. And this is why he would say, I will forever be binded to Israel because of my covenant that I made with them. Does that make sense? And this is why he had to change Jacob's name. He had to change all of them name, Abraham's name, all the way down to Jacob. First what? Abram. But when he made the covenant with that, he changed his name to Abraham, making him a father of many nations. Even changed his wife's name. Sarah. And he said this is a continual covenant. So he was making even covenants with his seed, with Isaac and also Jacob, and had to change Jacob's name to Israel or Yashar. All right, so we understand that. That happens in the covenant. So what are some of the elements in the covenant that we just said?
Relationship and obligation.
Relationship and obligation. What's some of the other ones?
Laws, consequences. Conditions.
Conditions. That's good. What's another part of it that two parties might have to do? Take on each other what? Names. The greater kingdom or king will give their name to the lesser king or kingdom or person. You see what I'm saying? And that's the same thing that's implemented even in the marriage where the woman takes on the man's name. Because he's supposed to be what? A superior, not superior, but a greater kingdom than his wife. And on down to the kids. You see what I'm saying? So this is why she take on his name, making him responsible for his wife. And he will get in trouble if he's not taking care of his wife's needs. That's what she came into covenant with him. So he's obligated for her not to want. We understand that. He's obligated. So he has to do what he can in order to take care of the needs of that woman and take care of the needs of the family. Because why? He's the greater kingdom. You see what I'm saying? And this is why she's identified with his name, because now responsibility has been taken from her father, because she wore a father name first. And her father was what? Obligated to her and responsible for her, because he was her greater kingdom then, because he came out of her. But then the responsibility get passed on to the next man, or the man that says he's going to be responsible for her when she get married. And that's why she take off her father name and take on her man name. That makes sense? All right. Let's look at relationships. Is this making sense to y'all? This pretty clear? Is it pretty good?
Yeah, it is.
All right. Relationships. I told you we we're going to do a lot of reading. Relationships between parties. All right. So now we dealt with the obligation, the elements. Let's look at the relationship of the two parties with a covenant. First covenant is where it's created a formal bonded affiliation between designated parties. The party or parties enacted the covenant and created the relationship were specific by name. Frequently, the physical, watch this. Frequently, the physical descendants of the covenant parties were included by explicit designation and direct affiliation. So it wasn't just the person. What can we say about Deuteronomy chapter what?
30.
What 30? Yeah. But we're going back to 28. Okay. That says that you look at verse 45 and verse 46. Not only with you do I make this covenant, but these things shall be upon you and upon your seed forever. Now Deuteronomy 29, verse I think it's verse 10. I want to say.
10 through 16.
Yeah. Of 29.
14 and 15 talk about generations to come.
There you go.
The ones that's here and not here.
And not here. That's Deuteronomy 29 and what?
I think 14 and 15.
Good. 14 and 15. And it details it, unless you see that I'm not making this with only you, but I'm making this with your descendants. This was not something that was just indigenous to Israel. when they made a covenant and they made specifics of it, it wasn't just the people that was making it, but the physical descendants of the parties was into the covenant by affiliation. Let's keep reading. Once formally enacted, all the terms of the accord were enforced and were binding upon those who enacted it. Only it stated contracting parties partook directly of the covenant responsibilities and benefits. To be named in a legal instrument as an active party in the instrument was to incur legally its responsibilities, advantages, and penalties. So if you are named in this, and he named Israel in this, then you could legally be held responsible. You can take on the advantages and the penalties. Because what? Your name is on here. And everybody that comes out of your name is on here. So now y'all have the first advantages and the first penalties. You see what I'm saying? And you can go to Romans chapter 2 and you will see that. Romans chapter 1 verse 16 talk about the power of the gospel and to all that believe, to the Yahudim first and also to the Gentile. Then Romans chapter 2, and you bring it on down, it talks about and shows you how honor, love, and peace will be on those that do good, first going to the Yahudim, then to the Gentiles. But when those that do bad, consequences, repercussions, I'm paraphrasing, and all that will come upon you, but it goes to the Yahudim first. Why? Because they're the ones named that is written on the covenant. So you can take care of the advantages and you get the consequences first. By nature and design, covenants were exclusive. They established an absolute and unique relationship between the contracting parties. So let's keep reading. Peoples, watch this. Now this is important. People other than the enacted parties to the covenant might find a reference in the accord, but their auxiliary reference did not make them direct participation. The covenant was not cut with them. Any responsibility, born or bane, that might befall them as designated in the accord did so as a result of their interaction or their affiliation with the legal parties of that covenant. Did you see that? So in this covenant, everything might not be directed with the people around everywhere. But when you came into interaction with the people of the covenant and came into formulation with them, then the things that are in the covenant will be enacted on you because of your one accordance with the people of the covenant, or your interaction with the people of the covenant. And this is why other places they went, even when they scattered, they absorbed the people and brought them a part of them. So the same things that happened to them happened to them. You see what I'm saying? So this is why I believe that everybody that was on those ships that came over here had some type of interaction with the people of the covenant. Well, they was following it at one point. Because you can't have wisdom that Israel had, true Israel had, and not want to be a part of what they do. You going into places where people are just doing crazy idolatry type stuff, and you showing them the wisdom and you showing them a way, they'll want to be introduced to your God. And once they get introduced through their interaction, now I became a part of this. It'll be just like, just say if you at the house, right? You and your family at the house. Y'all chilling. You had somebody came and spend a night. Just say your kids, teenagers, you had some, your children, teenagers, you had some of their friends spend a night over your house, right? They in your house. Say somebody come to rob their house. Are they going to do separation? They going to get it because what? They in the house with y'all. They're affiliated at the time of the trouble. So you can't be like, well, I ain't part of this family. Don't take me. Don't rob me. No. Because what? You're in the house with them. So what? You going to get what? That same tapping. So they're showing you that even though it wasn't designated to the people exclusively that went in covenant, but with their interaction with the people of those covenant, it made them in direct with them, and they got their consequences because of their affiliation with the people of the covenant. You see what I'm saying? And this is why at those times that people would come into covenant with others, and then some people would. That makes sense? All right, we're going to keep going. Let me see. Let me read this right here. Okay. Indirect, well, and this is good to understand too. Indirect participation demanded first that the parties be specifically identified in a covenant as incidental participants, and second, that the covenant be enforced. So if you was identified, this is why they would call the other one strangers. That's why he said the stranger that is with us, even though it's going to be one law for both all, and you considered that, but you had to be identified of who you were. So you can get all the rights of the what? Natural born. But you could get some benefits and some blessings being affiliated with what? The natural born. You see what I'm saying? It must be formally ratified before either the contract and the non-contracting parties can experience their benefits. Not to be named specifically as the party to or participant in the covenant was to be excluded from the covenant. Covenants were enacted for the purpose of creating formal, unique, bonded relationships. This is why when they broke the covenant, and you look in Jeremiah 31 and 31, and Hebrews 8 and 8, and he said, I'm making a new covenant with who? Israel. Because what? The people that was specifically identified in the first covenant had to be identified again. He couldn't just say, well, look, bump down, I'm making a covenant with the whole world now. The people, it said that the people had to be identified in the covenant. So what had to happen, this is why when you come to the renewed or restored covenant, the same people that started in this covenant had to be re-identified. And everybody else, because of their interaction with them, being submitted under the Messiah, they can reach the king and have part of the kingdom also too. Does that make sense? But I couldn't name everybody in the world right there because I didn't make this covenant with everybody. I had to use the direct terminology that I used with the first people. Does that make sense? All right. We're going to do a few more things and then we're going to get ready to stop. And we'll pick back up next week. Let's look at obligations and benefits. Like when I had this on PowerPoint, I was able to skim through some of it, but I got to read it. Obligations and benefits. Second, covenants involve obligations. Covenants define the parameters and procedures of contractual relationship between the legal parties. The instrument stated with unequivocal, however that is, terms which specific parties was beholden to with specific obligations. Often delineated were the rights and benefits or the blessings that were incurred by designation parties for their unfailing compliance with the terms of the covenant. Specific benefits were listed that could encompass all areas of life, tangible and intangible. Once a covenant was formally ratified, all the benefits immediately own legal force through its actual experience of any particular benefit by a contingent or time and performance. Also specified my the penalties and the curses that would befall a party or parties in violation of the covenant terms. All covenants by nature involve obligation, obligors, obligees, and all covenant responsibilities and benefits were cohesive and enactment of binding in execution. So we're able to see that today in the covenants that would benefit every area in your life. All right, we're going to do these last two here, commencement and termination. What would happen if a covenant is terminated? We'll stop after that. That's okay? All right. Anybody got any questions before we move on? Anything that kind of like cloudy by from what I've been saying? Everybody all right? Okay, as long as you can follow what I'm doing, that's pretty good. All right, everybody online, all right. Okay, Let's go. Commencement. All right, let's read. Like I said, we got to do a lot of reading. And those that want this document, y'all let me know. I try to upload it in the group and upload it to so you can have it and you read through this. Next time we meet, I have it sectioned off a little better. But I thought I did it, but I couldn't find my PowerPoint presentation when I was trying to look for it now. So I had to get another PowerPoint together last night for another thing. But we're going to work this out. All right, let's look at this. Covenants as legal instruments were officially ratified. Ratified means to cut or make it in action or in place at a precise point in time. The terms might be discussed, negotiated, spoken, reiterated, and recorded prior to legal ratification. But the terms, obligations, and benefits and penalties were theoretically until the moment of official enactment. Covenants after initial ratification, which is putting in place, might also regularly be rehearsed or renewed with much of the attendant verbiage or ceremonies of the original ratification. Watch this now, this is important to see. A renewal might occur when the terms of a covenant have been broken and violated, and the violating party found need for restoration. Or renewal might also occur on a regular schedule. Later generations who by birth became party to the covenant was as originally enacted by their progenitors also might seek a renewal. When renewed, some of the terms might be adapted by mutual stipulations to changing circumstances. Nevertheless, the covenant came into force in its entirety precisely at the temporal nexus with the initial legal ratification. Renewals were only reinstatements and reaffirmation of an original covenant already in force. They were not new covenants in themselves. That's important to know. What did it say? When a covenant was broken, it can be renewed or restored. They said when it's broken and the people have broken it, then you have an opportunity to restore it, to renew it, even with later generations. But you're not making a new covenant without restoring the old. So this is why the terminology is there's no old and new covenant. We understand that. That's just the old covenant being what? Restored. So the Messiah came in as the representative to what? Change the stipulations, make things different so this covenant can be back what? Restored and put you in back alignment with the Creator. So it's not nothing new. All right, let me show you this. But if you look in the New Testament and look up the word new, you'll see new. How's it different? All right, let me give you this. You got two places that's talking about a new covenant. In Hebrews 8 and 8, it's talking about I'm gonna make a new covenant with you. But you have to go to Jeremiah 30, 31 and 31 to see the first place that it spoke of a new covenant. All right? It reiterated in the book of Hebrews. But the book of the so-called New Testament was written in what? Greek. So you got to go to the Jeremiah, which is considered the Old Testament, and look up that word new. When you look up that word new, in the first place that it was spoken, it says restored. But when you look at it in a translation of the Greek scriptures, then it says new. So that's when you have to go back to the original Hebrew mind, which is the Hebraic way, which is in the Torah and the Tanakh, and see what the prophet said and look up what the prophet is saying. And when you look at that word new in Jeremiah 31 and 31, I believe that is, it is saying that it's a restored covenant. And we get in the history here that covenants in ancient time was not made new. They was just restored. If the people of that covenant, we reading that right here, a renewal might occur when the terms of the covenant had been broken and the violating parties found need for restoration, or renewal might on a regular schedule, later generations who by birth became a party of the covenant as originally enacted by those progenitors also might seek a renewal. When it's renewed, some of the terms might be adapted by mutual stipulations to changing circumstances. Nonetheless, the covenant came into force in its entirety, precisely at the temporal nexus and its initial legal ratification. Renewals were only reinstatements and reaffirmations of an original covenant already in force. They were not new covenants in of themselves. Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to, last thing we'll read is about termination. So that opened up a whole world for me when I really understood that back in ancient times, they weren't actually making no new covenant. They was restoring the old and making that right. All right, so this is the last part we're talking about, is termination of a covenant, or ancient covenant. Ancient covenants, especially, well, I tell you what. We'll come back to this one. No, I tell you what, I'm going to read this. We'll end on this one here. All right, technically, covenants were not dissolved or terminated by non-compliance. The covenant continued in force even when it was broken. So a breaking of a covenant didn't stop the covenant, right? Even when Israel broke the covenant still was going on. Yeah, exactly. But that was what? Consequences of the covenant. So even though they break it, it ain't ratified. So that was it. The covenant continued to be enforced even when it was broken and its stipulations violated. That which changed legally was the consequences of the covenant, not the continuance of the covenant. The covenant breaker could be cut off or excluded from enjoying the covenant benefits or blessings, but the contract continued in force. And if it contained curses for non-compliance, the curses was invoked, and by their invocation, the covenant continued to operate. I'm gonna read that again. The covenant breaker could be cut off or excluded from enjoying the benefits and the blessings of the covenant. But the contract continued to be enforced if it contained curses for non-compliance. The curses were invoked, and by their invocation, the covenant continued to operate. So we see that this is the reason why this continued to come all the way down to our generation. But this is the last prophesied captivity that we were supposed to happen. All the captivities before that happened, Christ, the Messiah, prophesied our captivity. So there's no more captivities after this. After this is just basically us turning back to him, getting right, and getting ready to be taken back to the land. So we're going to stop right there. Anybody got any comments, questions, or concerns? Any comments, questions, or concerns? We just bought. Yeah, I'm gonna post a document so y'all can have it.
And that's Eastern, understanding Eastern.
Ancient Eastern covenants. And I got the documents and the different things that you might need for that.
And that's very important before we get baptized, understanding basically what
yes.
the covenant is and what we're going into.
Exactly. And that's why it's important, like I said, to get this information, to understand this information before you go into a baptism. Because the baptism that the Messiah about was a new initiation. That was another, he put another stipulations into being restored. So your baptism is your first sign of being restored from one covenant into this other. Because it puts you under a whole new priesthood. You see what I'm saying? But we'll do, like I said, we got a teaching on that that's coming up pretty soon. And this is why, you know, all of us probably get baptized again. So we understand what we're doing on a whole nother scale.
You still think about in December?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about that. I know in Texas, we're supposed to go to Texas again. And we're thinking about doing another one with the people down there. But either we can wait till in December, or either if we want to do something before then, we can. But I would just want to wait till the person that initially woke me up to be the one to do it for me. But if something happened where we can't, then we'll just go ahead and do it.
And then Golden Camp Road, that's a good place to go to. They'll let you rent out that pool at the what center is that?
Golden Camp Road.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
The indoor pool. I actually got baptized there a few years ago.
It's called a what?
The community center.
That's off of Dean's Bridge.
The community center that sits off Dean's Bridge. I know it used to be burning water.
Oh, you can rent that out. You can rent the pool out. Oh, okay. How much they want? You know?
I don't know. I don't think it's that.
That's a good idea to rent a pool out at that time. Where it'll just be us in there.
That's all it was there.
That's a great idea. I think we will do it like that. All right, so we'll stop right there. We'll pick back up. Going into next week, breaking some more things down, you know, about it. But hope everybody was able to get some understanding and see where we're coming from. And I don't think I have any other announcements. I really can't see if anybody got any more questions and stuff online. I'm trying to turn it where I can see. I'll get it a little while.
I feel like we might have missed out on some of this. Is there any videos of assigned to the government?
Yeah. Oh, you can really just go on the YouTube page, and I got a playlist that has the teachings on there for the covenant. So you just go there, go to videos, and then go to playlist, and you'll see. I'm gonna throw this one on there too. Up another one, a video of some of the information that I received in there too, so you can see it. But you go and watch part 1 and part 2, and add this with them, and you'll be pretty much on top of what we got going on. But it looked like nobody online got any questions there. All right. Well, I'll close all this up. Get ready to shut this out.